What's happening in the courtroom as Pastor Art Polowski faces yet another trial? We get the analysis from someone who joined me in the courtroom, one of our newest rebels, Selene Galas. I'm Sheila Gunn Reid, and you're watching The Gunn Show. If you were following along with my Twitter feed yesterday, you would know that I was in the courtroom as Pastor Art Polowski of Calgary is in another trial for feeding the homeless on the streets of Calgary. And it is a bizarre persecution of the pastor, given that public protests at the time when he received the ticket were recently deemed to be not covered under the Chief Medical Officer of Health's orders of that time. Only private gatherings were covered under it. So now the Crown is trying to say that Art's open air Christmas festival / soup kitchen was somehow a private gathering exclusively relegated to just Christians, when people's faith in Christ was never quizzed before Art fed them steak and gave them Christmas presents and showed them a little dignity and joy and love and kindness during the Christmas season of 2020. Now, joining me in the courtroom is someone who started off as an intern, Selene Galas. Selene's got a crazy story. Literally her first day with us, we stuck her in a rental car with Mocha Bezirgan and sent her to Ottawa chasing the convoy. And then after she was finished covering the convoy in Ottawa, instead of going home, she went straight to the border blockade at Coutts and started working there. You might say we tried to break her, but we really didn't. There's just so much news to cover, and we have great expectations for the young people who start working for us. And now Selene is learning how to court report. And just last week, she chased Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, unsuccessfully, however, on the streets of Calgary. So I thought, since I'm in court, since I'm in Calgary, and since Selene's got an interesting career trajectory, that we would sit down and talk in the workspace in Calgary. So this is the conversation we had yesterday when we were on lunch from court, which we did not eat lunch because we had to film this and then get back to court. So take a listen to our interview. I'm here in the workspace in Calgary with someone who started off as an intern, Selene Galas. But Selene, I wanted to have you on the show because I'm in Calgary this week covering the trials and tribulations of Pastor Art. So we want to talk about that. But I also want to talk to you about the pathway to becoming a rebel, because you started off as an intern with us. And we threw you like right into the fire. Right into the fire. Your first day with us, you jumped in a rental car with Mocha Bezirgan and went all the way to the convoy to Ottawa. I guess my question is, why didn't we break you? We tried.
They tried. They definitely did. I'm a big believer of trial by fire in general. I'm an individual that really likes to push myself, and I'm always aiming to strive towards betterment. And anywhere that there is an obstacle, I mean, working for Rebel in general is an obstacle. It's a lifestyle, is what I like to tell people when they ask me like what they can do to work for Rebel News, or what does it take? And I tell them, I'm like, well, it's not a job. Like, you need to, this is a lifestyle. You eat, breathe, sleep, and you live this, because this is a passion. This is a passion for me, and unbroken. Yeah, I'll remain that way, 100%.
And one of the things that I'm really proud of that we do at Rebel News is you might start as an intern doing one thing, for example, just hanging a camera out the window as Mocha drives across the country. Yeah. But we get you doing other things. We get you, working in other parts of the company to see what fits. Did that work for you?
Absolutely, it did. Yeah, I was definitely able to discover a lot of the different passions that I have for different multimedia as well. So it did start with just me hanging myself out of the window and capturing the convoy, and that was incredible for sure. And then being on the streets of Ottawa too, that was really just super intense at all times. But then having the opportunity to report, or even having a hand in creating the media that we send out on a day-to-day basis for daily content, or social media just in general, it's been great to be able to explore those different avenues for myself.
Okay, so let's talk about the trip to Ottawa, because your trip to Ottawa didn't actually end with you even coming home. You went from Ottawa straight to Coutts to cover the border blockade there. But what was it like? Because I think Rebel got the story right, and everybody else, with the exception, I think, of True North and a couple of other places, they got it wrong. What was your experience inside the convoy?
So Ottawa was really different than Coutts. Very, very different, actually. Just the atmosphere in general, like when you approach Milk River, it's a very small town. It's very desolate, as opposed to being in the middle of Ottawa where, it's already a hustle and bustle type of city. But just approaching Milk River, there was this tangible feeling in the air, just like this tension all around. And driving up this long road in the prairies, you could just see the convoy just stopped, and then this entire streamline of police cars with their sirens and their lights on. And when we pulled into it was that bar, I don't recall the name.
Smugglers, I think.
Yes, yeah, exactly that. The people, it was different. Like it felt like a war zone, to be honest with you. There wasn't, despite some of the times where like people were laughing and trying to be very lighthearted about the situation, like they were stationed right on the border of the U.S. and that's not a small feat, and it's not for the faint of heart. And they were there for a very, very long time. And in Ottawa, there's a lot of smiles and stuff like that, and people celebrating and dancing, and that was not how it was in Coutts at all. It was very cutthroat. I think that's a good way to describe it. But I was really proud of the way that people contained themselves and kept a state of peace, and they were able to just like remain in that the whole time. But it was definitely very different from Ottawa in the fact that you didn't see a lot of smiles. It was like desolate, barren, freezing cold. Yeah. Absolutely freezing. And K2 and Sid, the work that they did down there, that was incredible. They really put themselves on the front lines, and they did everything necessary to capture the story as altruistically as possible.
Yeah, they really did capture, I think, the feeling of Coutts in their documentary that you can see at truckerdocumentary.ca. And we have new showings that we're working on. We've done 2 in Calgary, and we have new ones coming to other parts of the province and maybe even other parts of the country. So keep checking back there. If you're a subscriber to Rebel News Plus, well, good news, because you can see the movie there. It's included in your Rebel News Plus subscription. And boy, what a great time to become a Rebel News Plus subscriber. If you're watching the paywalled version of the show, well, you already know. And if you're watching the free version of the show, now's your chance, because there's a lot of content behind the paywall that you won't see anywhere else. But yeah, it was very tense, I think, down there. And whereas in Ottawa, there were 3 weeks of fun and street parties before the tension came, before the police moved in. But at Coutts, it was always tension. There was always conflict with the police. And they really didn't know if the police were going to come from the south or from the north. They were cut off from their friends and family. Everybody else was blockaded in Milk River. So they were in a constant hyper state of tension there. Yeah. And that's really captured in the documentary. But yeah, you went all the way to Ottawa, did that, and then drove all the way back across the country in a rental car. And went straight to Coutts. You didn't even go straight home.
No, I went straight to Coutts with Mocha. Yeah, we couldn't not. Like, I guess it's also just the thrill of like riding that train of adrenaline, so to speak. Like after coming back from Ottawa, like we honestly, we didn't want to leave. There's always a part of like journalism where like you get to the point where you're like, there's more to cover, there's always more to see, we want to be able to show that to the viewers. But then right in our backyard we had Coutts, so driving back it was a little bit slow paced, and we're like, we need to go and offer aid to our fellow rebels and go meet them down there. So yeah, we straight from Ottawa all the way to Coots, no stopping. I hadn't seen my cat for like 15 days, I think. It was insane. But yeah, it was good.
Now, I think you are a testament to just how actually tolerant we are at Rebel News with people who have different lifestyles and different viewpoints. For example, you came to us as a vegan. Now we got you on the chicken wings. I know that for a fact because you ate some of mine one day.
That's true.
You even were able to ask politicians questions about gun rights. So you asked the question about gun rights at the Conservative Party leadership debate in Edmonton, and then Adam took you to the gun range.
That was awesome. Yeah. That was a really great experience. That was very fun. Yeah. Keep your hands off our guns.com. If you haven't checked it out, definitely do now. I just think it's ridiculous to be able to really crunch down on people's rights and freedoms in a time where, we're trying to facilitate a reality where we feel like we have some of those back in our own hands. I don't agree with personally, and I was a vegan for 6 years.
Teasing.
6 years, but it is contradicting. You'd think, veganism, definitely probably against guns because of the ethics and whatnot, but it never settled right with me. I've always been pro-gun, even pro-hunting to a certain extent. It's really, for me, it was it's how the system is abused even in that way. I don't like seeing different systems that we have kind of working in a state of dysfunction. I don't see that there's a purpose to certain things. Health above wealth, or health is wealth in all terms of things, but definitely, shooting guns with Adam was great. That was highlight of that week for sure.
Conservatives, take your liberal friends to the gun range. If you want to convert them to being a friend of the firearms movement, just take them to the gun range.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Now, what did it feel like to be able to ask a politician a tough question? Because when you ask politicians questions, it can feel intimidating, but you have to realize they're actually scared of you and the question you're asking.
Yeah. Actually, I watched my little video segment back a few times, and he was all smiles at me, Mr. Aitchison, until I said from Rebel News, and there's just this slight moment where I kept going back and laughing because his face just kind of dropped, like the micro expression of, what is she about to ask me? Like, I don't know if I can answer this. I wasn't afraid in general, to be honest. There's something that I realized about politicians and journalists is that we have this way of it's like magnets in a room, because we are always going to be reporting on what they're doing, and they're always going to be worrying about what we're reporting in regards to their actions. So it's like we're magnets in the room, and every time that, they would shift or say something or do something, I could notice and I could feel that above anyone else in the crowd, like there was the magnetism and there was almost like eye contact or looking or, reactions. And when I walked up to the podium and I was the first person to ask that question, I was really happy to do so, and I was very confident, and I'm glad that I was able to ask that question about gun rights, because at the time we didn't know what Trudeau had in his back pocket or card up his sleeve, so to speak. So it was very interesting to see it play out that way.
And it's good because you are asking a question that thousands, tens of thousands, actually I think it's over 2 million licensed Canadian firearms owners. That's a question that they care about. Yeah. And that's our duty as journalists, is to ask questions that the people want answers to, not like the CBC at that debate where they just kept asking the same dumb question about climate change over and over to each and every politician.
We got the WEF for that. Yeah, definitely check out the documentary on YouTube as well. I got Keen Simone on that, as well as Lewis Brackpool from the UK. So, yeah.
Now, you are in court with me today. We're filming this on Tuesday. We're in court covering the trial of Pastor Art Polowski. And this is a 3-day trial, and there's no way in heck that they're going to be done in 3 days, on the matter of a single public health ticket for illegal public gathering. And the illegal public gathering in question was a Christmas meal that he served to the homeless in downtown Calgary. He's on trial right now for serving them steak, which breaks my heart because I can't even imagine when was the last time those folks had a steak. Yeah. And vegetables and potatoes and gingerbread. There was mention of gingerbread and hot chocolate. I can't even believe the things I'm hearing in court. I can't even believe that these things are crimes. And giving them Christmas presents, organizing Christmas presents for them. And we heard testimony all day this morning, all morning. It's been a real soul-sucking experience. This is sometimes pretty boring. But just the idea that a pastor in Calgary could be on trial, facing fines for feeding the homeless. And Art made a great point to us today that he was feeding the homeless when the homeless had been denied services by the city of Calgary because they initially limited the amount of people who could be in the homeless shelter. Can you even believe what we're hearing today?
No, I can't. Official statement. No, I can't. Yeah. I've actually never been in court before. This is my first time, and it's really different from the movies. If you've never been in court before, like it's not. There aren't all these very hard questions being asked where you're constantly on the edge of your seat and you're waiting. If it's going to be testified against or if there's going to be an objection. I literally sat there for the most part with you today, despite that we had some good tweets and we were definitely keeping the viewers updated. But most of them towards the end were about if the Christmas trees there were real, if the people wearing what we could assume to be Santa hats were in fact Santa hats.
They said they were not specifically traditional Santa hats, but they were Christmas specific.
Christmas
Great.
specific.
Riveting.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I needed that, I just feel bad. I feel like it's we're focusing on the peas and the carrots when we need to be, no pun intended, focused on the steak. Like the hand. The very important thing at matter here is definitely Art Polowski and the fact that, just like you said earlier, like they were denied resources. And I sent out a tweet, and the Crown was actually insinuating by asking the peace officer there that's testifying against Pastor Arter, if there are other resources that exist in Calgary for the homeless population. And, she said yes, because of course there are. There always have been in the city. But to what extent? So does that mean that when someone puts forth the effort to really, show them courtesy a little bit more and give them a warm meal, and
show them love and kindness and dignity. That was one of the, sorry to interrupt you, but that was one of the things that I guess the Crown found appalling was that Art and his congregation were hugging the homeless and shaking their hands and showing them kindness and human dignity and destigmatizing them. And, we hear that word all the time from the left that there shouldn't be stigma. Well, when Art does that in practice, he ends up in court.
He ends up being arrested for it, and tried for doing that. And I don't agree with it. Personally, it's not something that sits well with me. I'm not sure who, could actually be very honest and deconstruct the entire event that we're going over today in court, which is just a gathering of people that are literally there to facilitate that warm, loving environment for people that probably haven't been shown a lot of that in their lives, but not in recent times as well because of the pandemic, right? There's a lot of fear-mongering around being close to the people around you, let alone your family. Like, how do you think that they feel being that they're already on the streets and homeless? So seeing that video, it warmed my heart. But obviously with the Crown, they were more focused on the gingerbread and the color of the speakers being used.
That was another thing that they're using as evidence against Art because at the time, people were only allowed to gather together if they were from the same household. And so the peace officer said, these people, they're obviously not from the same household. Yeah, they don't have houses. It's sort of implied when you call someone homeless that they don't have a house to go to. And this was the only place where they could get a hot meal that day and be shown love and not treated like, the unmentionables on the street that day.
No, absolutely. And that was another tweet that we focused on being very keen about sending out, is just that how do you even have that conversation with somebody? Like, it can be so simply broken down between us and in this conversation. And I'm sure everyone on the other side of this camera is pretty much nodding their heads at this point, but it's really hard to get around like the simplicity of actions that are just literally from kindness and love. Like, it doesn't have to be complicated. I think that's where ego comes into play, and most of the time politics as well, because something like this that is so simple and just literally from the bottom of their heart, from the organizations that they're a part of, it's I don't understand it. This is court's a little bit challenging, but it's good.
It is challenging, especially when you're looking at the evidence. One of the videos that we were shown today shows Art talking about his Christmas event that he wants to hold for the homeless. And behind him are hundreds of people skating, literally hundreds of people skating on Olympic Plaza. Yeah. That's fine. But art gathering together to feed the homeless, that wasn't fine. That was an illegal public gathering under the rule. And as you're sitting there, you're realizing, okay, this is 3 days long. This is on a charge that goes back to December 2020. Yeah. It's 3 days. There's no way they're going to finish because the Crown is sucking our life out by just entering all these nonsense things into evidence and taking forever. But we know that Alberta has an extreme shortage of Crown prosecutors to the point where real crimes are being thrown out because they're going over the constitutional limit of when you should have a speedy trial. And so rapists are walking free. People who abuse their wives and their children or their spouses are walking free while the Crown wastes resources. 3-day trial on this ticket instead of just tossing it out and saying it's not in the public interest.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. During the entire pandemic in the winter, people were skating all the time. I'm born and raised Calgary. I was skating a couple times out there.
Right across the street from where Art got his ticket.
Yeah. So as always, it seems to be one law for me, one law for thee, or one law for, right? Yeah. So it's always, it's hypocritical. It's steeped in hypocrisy, these things. Like, it's literally right behind them in the video, too. Like, this entire thing. Yeah. And it's, like, multiples of people, and they're just going around. They're having a good time. Like, I'm sure if you zoomed into the clip, there's a lot of people that weren't masked at that time. Some people were. But that's one of the issues that she brought up, and that was actually objectified, is that she asked, the Crown asked the peace officer if she can recall the people in the crowd, wearing a mask. And, there's a lot of wiggle room for these things, especially, fast forward to 2022 with masks in particular. Like, just before it was lifted, you could go into a restaurant wearing a mask, but you could, also take it down to eat. So it's kind of the same premise. So, if you're going to go to a place where, you're expecting to get a warm meal, and, you're outside, it's already hard to breathe. It's like in the minus, 1,000 because it's Canada. How are you supposed to do those things? How do you facilitate even social distancing to grab your food? If we're going by like the meter stick of like 6 feet, it doesn't even make any sense. And when these points get brought up, now, back then it might have made more sense because of where we were at. And
but even then it didn't, because at that time, you didn't have to wear a mask outside. Oh, no. I mean, It doesn't make any sense, but why would the Crown even bring it in? And when challenged by Sarah Miller, Art's longtime lawyer on that issue, she said, well, it colors the crowd. As in, they're anti-lockdown. They aren't science believers. They're adjacent to the lockdown protests. So, they're being adjacent to the lockdown protests. Yeah. It's a good bet that they are colored with the same brush, but it was it was very clear trying to sort of bias the court against Art because he's an objector. They were sort of putting his politics on trial as opposed to his actions that day.
No, that's a really good point. Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense in regards to the science aspect, right? Especially if you are just outside, then it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It never did. No. That's why I didn't wear the mask.
That's why you're here.
That's why I'm here and I didn't wear the masks. Exactly.
Now, we have to get back to court. We're filming this on a break from court. I want to ask you, what is outside of the two convoys, I can't even believe that I'm saying outside of the two convoys that you covered, the two major international stories that you've covered for us, what's the most interesting story or the most fun story that you've done? Outside of the convoys, I know that those are pretty fun.
Those are. I don't know. Yeah. If you asked me that, I'd say they couldn't be beat by the convoy. But I think just recently when Justin Trudeau snuck into Calgary and we were down at the Fairmont here in Calgary. And just the crowds that showed up, like it was literally a tweet that was dropped. We got the tip. Me and Sid raced right from our second premiering of or showing of the new Coots Trucker documentary. And the crowd of people that was waiting there when Justin Trudeau's plane was not set to even touch down until 10 p.m. We arrived there just after 8. And there was already like 20, 30 people, using parabolics, running around with flags. And it was a good time. The crowd was peaceful, but it was just the dedication alone When you have a prime minister such as the one that we do in Canada, if you've watched the videos, you definitely, you know what's going on. It makes sense why there would be a crowd, but like just the determination and
it's what I love about Alberta, that Trudeau's not going to come on our turf and just get like the welcome wagon. No. We roll out the protests and and the FU Trudeau flags. Yeah. That's all out there in full force. He's not just going to roll in under cover of darkness and just roll out of town. No. Not Alberta.
No. There was so many different like back alleys and different passageways. Like we tried to like think like logistically, we're like, he's probably no matter what not going to roll through the front door, but like where would he most likely, come in? Or, if there's like an access point from the back, there is like 20, 30 ways to get into this building, not to mention the +15s, not to mention the underground tunnels that like run through there. So he snuck in. We got confirmation later from the staff that he was already in the building and sleeping, despite us, asking them before he got there. Apparently they just said that they had no idea what was going on, which was laughable. Yeah, I'm like, there's just 40 people in front of your establishment for absolutely no reason with F Trudeau flags and just,
and there's RCMP security all over the place. We don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
It's a mystery.
Yeah, it's a mystery for sure. Yeah, this is, and to see the mainstream media also, again, parked about 2 blocks down from where the Fairmont was, and just, capturing some angle. I'm not sure. I don't watch fake news. But they started to be belligerent when the crowd started to out them. Like, I got a little clip of it. I was kind of stowed away in a back alley, hoping that that's where he would come in from. Anyways, I got to capture it. Once the crowd started to realize, like, hey, that ginormous camera that guy is carrying over there and setting up and recording us from like such a far standpoint, like these are the people that, they know us personally. Like when we do journalism, like we actually go up to people, we talk to people, we're in the crowd, we enmesh with them. We are not
2 blocks up the road sitting in their car scared to death.
Being sketchy. Yeah, we're not being sketchy or suspect. But as soon as they were outed, the dude started shouting stuff back, and I was like, hey, just cut it. Take your camera and, just get on out of here. Yeah. Like, mosey on out. But we didn't catch Trudeau, unfortunately. I'll catch him eventually. Yeah. It's actually my goal. It's my number 1 goal. Yeah.
Now, you're not an intern anymore. So now you have to sort of decide what you want to do and the things you want to focus on. So what's sort of on your horizon that way, besides court reporting, so that I don't have to?
Sheila, I'm so glad that you asked me that. I'll definitely be doing probably, still a little bit of the back end stuff with social media and whatnot, and the court stuff when Sheila cannot be here, or Adam, or I'll probably just do it anyways. It's not too bad. The tweeting
is kind of fun, and it's interesting to see how the sausage gets made a little bit.
Yeah, the justice system does grind and squeak. Mm-hmm. It's interesting to be privy to that. But journalism as a whole, to be a reporter, I want the borders to open up. I want the restrictions to be lifted. And once they do, I would love to be a traveling international reporter, so I can report anywhere around the world and be dedicated to providing that other side of the story to the viewers.
But who will watch the cat?
That's a good point. That's a good point. No, she's good. My mom is she's like a cat grandma. She's like there's like lots of strays in her neighborhood, and they all just seem to gravitate to her. I mean, yeah, she like feeds them. So, just grandma, we got a cat grandma. We're good. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Well, Selene, we actually have to jet. We have to get back to court. So thanks for sitting down. Thanks for letting our viewers get to know you a little bit better. And I cannot wait to see what you do next.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sheila.
Now, this is the portion of the show where we read your viewer feedback. Unlike the mainstream media, we actually leave our comment section open. We even invite comments because we want to know what you think about the work that we're doing here at Rebel News. So one of the best ways to have me read your comments on air, and I do take them from different sources, but I do appreciate when they go directly to my email. So my email is sheila@rebelnews.com. And if you put Gunn Show letters in the subject line, it's really easy for me to find because I some days get hundreds of emails, and that's one of the best ways for me to sort through them. So anyway, now that that's out of the way, we can get to Kathy's letter. And she writes, I just watched K2's Trucker Convoy documentary. I followed all Rebel reporters throughout the ordeal, but wow. I live in Calgary, and on the one hand, wish I could have been at the Canyon Meadows Theatre to watch it with kindred spirits. But on the other hand, it made me weep with pride, and that would not be a good look to wear in public. Thank you to Kian and company for creating this wonderful piece that restores hope in my heart, and that makes me marvel even still at all the souls involved and the conditions with which they dealt in order to help restore some amount of normalcy to our lives. While there is still a ways to go to fully have freedom restored, there is hope. Kathy. Well, Kathy, I'm assuming that since you didn't go to the theatrical release at Canyon Meadows Cinema, that you are watching the Trucker documentary as part of your subscription to Rebel News Plus. For those of you who aren't subscribed to Rebel News Plus, there is exclusive content available only to subscribers behind that paywall. And to become a subscriber, just go to rebelnewsplus.com. The movie's called Trucker Rebellion, The Story of the Coots Blockade. We did 2 showings in Calgary at Canyon Meadows Cinema, and due to popular demand, we are releasing it to special showings in the Edmonton area. And as I'm filming this, I'm proud to say we just booked a very interesting, fun event. It's dinner and a movie. It's $64.99. It is at a restaurant that has hosted events for us before, so we know they're cancel culture resilient. And so you get a great all-you-can-eat buffet meal with your non-alcoholic drinks included. And then we watch the movie together, and then we're going to have a Q&A session afterwards. To get your tickets, and you must get your tickets fast because there are only 100 of them, just go to truckerdocumentary.com and you'll get your tickets there. And like I said, move fast. There's only 100. This is going to be a very interesting, fun event with great food, great people, and then a great discussion afterwards. Well, everybody, that's the show for tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see everybody back here in the same time, in the same place next week. And remember, don't let the government tell you that you've had too much to think.